Hey guys, this is John from Walton's, and this is how to make snack sticks. Now, snack sticks are just a cured sausage that are stuffed into a smaller diameter collagen casing. This is smoked collagen and is definitely the most commonly used for snack sticks. Snack sticks are cured, so you're going to use SureCure in it. This is going to preserve the flavor of the meat and keep it safe during the smoking process. When we're smoking a cured sausage, we are creating the perfect environment for all sorts of nasty little bacteria, microorganisms. The SureCure is going to help make sure that your meat is safe throughout the entire process. Now, the first thing that we're going to talk about is meat selection. Now, snack sticks can be made from basically any protein. We've made them from pheasant. Obviously, we make them a lot from pork, beef, venison, all sorts of wild game. The important thing is your fat selection. You want to choose pork fat. This is for a couple of reasons. Number one, pork fat has a really nice bright white color to it. Two, it has very little taste on its own, and most importantly, it's got a creaminess that is basically unmatched in any other fat. Even if you're making an all beef snack stick, if you want the best possible result, I would highly recommend that you add some pork fat to it. Generally, we want to be somewhere in the 75% protein to 25% fat ratio. We can go a little bit above that, but if we go any above 70-30, any extra fat we add at that point is going to cook out of the sausage and create a mess on your floor. If we go below 20% fat, we're going to end up with a drier stick that isn't going to have that much taste. This is because as you're chewing the fat, it's going to melt, encapsulate your mouth, and it lets you experience the flavors longer. Now, for snack stick seasonings, we've got a huge array of them. Everything from our best-selling Willie's up to the sweet ginger Thai. Those two seasonings couldn't be further apart on taste, but they both make a really great snack stick. After you've chosen your seasoning, you're going to want to think about additives. Obviously, you're going to add the SureCure. This is what's going to give it its curing power. But a lot of people also do like to add cheese. Which cheese you use is going to be dictated in some part by what seasoning you're going to use. You're not going to want to use cheddar cheese if you're making a dill pickle snack stick. Those two flavors just don't go together. So put some thought into that. We always recommend people use SureGel. SureGel is a binder that is going to help keep everything where it should. We always say that it just increases your margin of error. So if you don't get the best bond while you're mixing, that SureGel is going to help make sure everything stays where it should during the smoking process. Then we want to talk about cure accelerators. There's two of them that we recommend pretty often. One of them is encapsulated citric acid. Now, encapsulated citric acid is going to lower the pH of your meat, making it a more acidic environment. This does help preserve the meat, especially early on, but it also adds a tang to the sausage that some people just don't like. If you're one of those people, another additive you can use is sodium erythorbate. Sodium erythorbate is going to accelerate the cure so that it's working quicker within the meat. The downside to sodium erythorbate is its potency. 7/8 of an ounce of this material is enough to accelerate the cure to 100 pounds of meat. So you need to be very careful when you're measuring it out. We like to tell people that the Ascali Precision Scale is a must-have if you're going to be using sodium erythorbate in smaller than 100-pound batches. The first step is going to be cut up whatever protein you're using, whether it be pork, beef, wild game, into pieces small enough to fit down the throat of your grinder. Depending on what type of grinder you're using, you may want to get a nice freeze on that meat first. If you're using a traditional grinding head like this one, we would recommend that you cut it into cubes, put it in your freezer, and basically to the point where it's just short of crunchy on the outside. You want it to have some good resistance as you're squeezing. This is going to do a few things. One, it's going to speed the grinding process up immensely. That first and more importantly, second grind will go by much faster if your meat is almost frozen solid. Second, it's going to keep your meat safer. When we're talking about snack sticks, anything like this, like I said earlier, we are creating the perfect environment for all sorts of nasty little bacteria. So sanitation and keeping your meat cold are really important. Now, if you're using something like our Walton's one-shot grinder head, you can take meat right out of the fridge. This doesn't need to be frozen at all. What this does is grinds meat twice in a single pass. So it's got the standard auger system, but then it has a large kidney plate on the inside, followed by a two-sided knife. This has sharpened edges on both sides. And finally, you can put whatever plate you want on the outside. You can use a 1/8, a 3/16, a 3/8, it doesn't matter. For a cured sausage, we're gonna use a 1/8 plate. This means that we're gonna go from whole chunk meat into a finished product that is fine enough to go right to our mixer in one pass. This saves a lot of time. For those of you who've done lots of cured sausage processing, that second grind takes a long time. And remember, all the time that meat is out of the cooler is time that we could be introducing any type of bacteria to it. So this gives you a nice, beautiful, clean grind and gets it done really fast. Now, when we're mixing, the first thing we're gonna wanna add to our mixer is our meat. Then we're gonna add our seasoning and any additives aside from encapsulated citric acid. Encapsulated citric acid needs to go in during the last 60 seconds of the mixing process. Add your water, add your cheese, and begin mixing. We wanna mix here until we get something called protein extraction. This is gonna be when your meat is nice and sticky. If you pick up a handful of it and pull the meat apart, the meat is gonna stretch with you. Another way to check it is grab a handful of it and hold your hand palm side down. The meat should stick to your hand. This is gonna make sure that your fat stays inside the sausage during the smoking process. As we're smoking it, we're gonna hit temperatures that are going to render the fat. If it's encapsulated in the rest of the meat, it can melt, but it's gonna have nowhere to run to. It will just reform right inside the sausage. Adding Sure-Gel absolutely can help here. During the last 60 seconds, add your encapsulated citric acid. If you add it too early, you run the risk of breaking that encapsulation and introducing the acid too early in the process. This is gonna denature your proteins and can give you a dry and crumbly sausage, or your proteins may just completely refuse to bind. Now, when you're loading your canister for stuffing, we wanna get as little air in there as possible. If you load your meat at a 45-degree angle and just change that every time you add more meat, you're gonna end up with less air in there. You should also be punching down at the meat. This will also help get any air out of it. Now, if you're using a 19mm collagen casing, which is what we recommend, you should use a 12mm stuffing tube. That's the largest tube that casing will slide easily over. As you're stuffing down, if you're using a hand crank stuffer, you'll wanna have something to anchor the stuffer down to prevent it from rocking. The Walton suction cup feet are great for this. If not, just a basic wood clamp to the edge of your table. Stuff until the casing is full and smooth. You want to be able to just faintly see a swirl pattern running down the outside of the casing. If you see any crinkles in the casing, or you can easily see that pattern, it is probably understuffed. If the casing looks completely smooth and plump, then it's overstuffed. The danger of that is when you go to hang your casing, it can rupture during the cooking process, dropping everything on the floor. So it just takes a little bit of practice to get good at what the correct level of firmness is. Now, when you go to add your meat to the smoker, you have to think about a couple of things. If you added a cure accelerator, we're going directly from stuffing right to smoking. If we didn't add a cure accelerator, we need to hold that meat after stuffing for 12 hours before we put it in the smoker. Now, those two meats are gonna act very differently initially in any smoker. If we're going right in from stuffing, our meat's gonna be a little bit warmer than it is if it's coming out of a cooler. It's also gonna have a different amount of moisture on the surface. So, if you've held it overnight in a cooler, allow your drying phase to go for 15 to 20 minutes longer than if you added a cure accelerator and are going right into your smoker. Either way you did it, your first phase should be 120 degrees for either an hour or an hour and 20 minutes with no humidity, your dampers wide open, and a fan blowing if you can. There's no reason to add smoke during this process either. After that first period, close your dampers 3/4 of the way down and kick the temperature up to 130 or 140 degrees. Let it cook at that for an hour, then kick it up to 150 degrees. At this point, we definitely want to add smoke and we want to add humidity. Now, not every smoker has the ability to add humidity. A great way to get a good product at home is to get a large, oversized water pan and get yourself just some basic automotive sponges. Get these completely wet and then stand them up in the smoker. All of this, including in these little caverns and tunnels, this is all surface area that water can be evaporated up off of. Now, why are we doing this? There's something called the stall with meat. That's when the moisture starts cooking out of the meat and gets it to the surface. Now, just like when you sweat, once that moisture reaches the surface of the sausage, it's gonna make it harder for thermal processing energy to penetrate it. This is because as it evaporates off, it's cooling the outside of that sausage, same as your skin. If we have high humidity already in the smoker, it's gonna be a lot harder for that moisture on the surface to evaporate off. That's gonna get us right through the stall, and it's gonna give us a better, juicier finished product. Then you're gonna wanna go up to 160 degrees, cook it there for an hour. And finally, go up to 175 degrees and cook it until the internal temperature of your meat is either 160 degrees for things like beef and pork, or 165 for any poultry and wild game. We're gonna wanna use either an ice bath or a shower cycle. Now, when we say ice bath, I mean ice bath. 50% ice, 50% water. If we try to just do a cold water bath, we're gonna have casings that start separating from the meat. This is because we need to stop the cooking process as quickly as possible. Otherwise, this can dwell for another 3 or 4 degrees. Now, for snack sticks, we don't necessarily recommend this, but you can pull your meat once it's hit 130 degrees internal temperature and finish it up in a sous vide cooker. Sous vide cooker is just something that heats water to a very specific degree. Snack sticks are generally thin enough that they don't require it, but if you're running into an incredibly long stall, or if you're on a real time budget, that can be an option to use. Take them out of the smoker and let them sit at room temperature for at least an hour and a half. 2 hours is probably better. This is called blooming, and this is where we're gonna see really nice color development. If you can see on these, we let these sit for 2 hours and they are beautiful dark red, just absolutely gorgeous looking. Then transfer them to your cooler overnight, come in the next day, let them sit out at room temperature again for at least an hour before vacuum packing them. If you try to vacuum pack them too early, we're gonna run into a problem. We're gonna get moisture in the bag, and that is gonna ruin the longevity of our product. Now, if this is your first time making snack sticks, you should end up with something that's firm yet fairly pliable with a nice snap to it. Now, some people like a wrinkled casing. If that's a look you're going for, there are a couple things you can do. One, you can add a higher fat content. That way, when the fat renders out of the product, you'll have a little bit of extra room and cavities for that casing to suck to. You can also add a little bit more water than you normally would, and you can slightly understuff your casing. In general, though, this is what we want to look for. A nice smooth casing with a good pop to it and a great taste. Now, one question we get a lot is, what are these little pink spots on the end of your snack stick? It's nothing to be alarmed about. This is actually just casing bleed. It's what colors the casing does run down into the meat a little bit on the edges. It's perfectly cooked as long as you made sure that it cooked up to 160 or 165. These snack sticks should keep for a really long time in the freezer. You'll have them for years to come. Now, if you're looking for more information on this, head on over to Meatgistics University, where we broke down cured sausage into an entire class. We've got the 1Os, the 2Os, and even some of the 3Os available over there to give you more information. As always, remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and visit waltons.com and meatgistics.com to find everything about the meat. Thanks for watching. I'm John with Waltons, and I'll see you guys next time.
Subscribe to Walton's YouTube channel to check out more meat processing videos. Shop waltons.com to find everything but the meat, or check out more handpicked videos by clicking here or clicking here.